Brad Lashley is a FIS technical delegate and also the head coach at Devil's Glen, and Nathleen is the Alpine Ontario officials chair. So a lot of awesome firepower behind today's presentation. So I'm really looking forward to it. Hope everyone did the questionnaire that Jen sent out. I thought that was a really nice addition. But this is also being recorded, and we'll post it to the Fall Coach webinar page for everyone to consume after the fact as well. But thanks so much for everyone attending, and I'll let Jen, Brad, and Nathleen take it away.
Thanks, Robin, and thanks everybody for attending. We'll continue to let you in as we see people coming in, but just a quick few things. All your mics, if you could mute them, or we will mute them for you. If you could leave your screen off for now or on. If we ask you to speak, we might randomly ask you to speak up for us. So unmute and show yourself so we can see your wonderful face. During the session, Brad and I will likely be presenting most, but we'll all be having any questions through chat directed to us, and anything that we want to have discussed, we'll bring it forward. To keep things to the 2-hour window, if discussions do go long, we will actually take it after the 2-hour session, and feel free to stay on with us. We'll keep going if it's needed. And above and beyond that, thanks again for everybody participating. So the purpose of this Jury Workshop 101 was to provide us with some instruction at our local and regional races, our non-point events. And we felt that there was a need for some education as people are coming in as level 2 officials and new coaches coming into this world that we live in, and navigating rules and how we go about them. But again, more focus on the roles of the jury in particular. So today, we're actually going to cover all the roles of the jury, the important rules that we might come across, and then understand the process. There is actually a process behind everything we do, so we need to understand that. And of course, how our jury does come to a decision and working as a team. Who's on the jury? Well, many of you got this right in your quiz, so congratulations. But of course, our referee is appointed from another club most often, and they are a coach. Typically, the chief of race is appointed by the Hill, and generally speaking, the technical delegate is appointed by the sanctioning body. At FIS level, or national events or provincial events, we have a sanctioned TD appointed by the sanctioning body, and usually they're from outside. For these types of races, however, we generally look at appointing the technical delegate from within our own clubs. So this kind of gives a different dynamic, especially in SOD. I'm pretty sure it works the same in the other divisions as well. And so we want to start this as our pathway for learning and developing at maybe less high-level races, and giving people some mileage under them to understand how the process works. So what do we need to know in advance? Well, the biggest part of our information delivery is actually our race notice, understanding what that course set is, what the course is, and specific to the age category that we're dealing with. So we also want to understand when and where the team captains meeting is, where we'll deliver that information. And of course, how many athletes. This is a very important part of what the program will be derived from. So we want to understand how many athletes we'll be dealing with. This is, of course, very important this year in particular due to, our COVID restrictions. Here's an example of a race notice where we have some information on a race in particular. And forgive, this is my club, Craigleith, so I have some examples from Craigleith. But of course, it gives the important information about what kind of race we're running, where it's being run, where the racers can apply or register, and of course, our team captains meeting. where is that going to be held? This is where we're going to deliver all the information. Now on this race notice, we're actually providing a program as well. But that, of course, is finalized at the team captains meeting. So it's very important for all the team captains, the club representatives for their athletes to be at that meeting. And then, of course, any other information that you need to have. Well, where will you find this information? Oops, sorry, everybody. The best place is actually on the Alpine Ontario website, where we have most of our race notices posted. But for these level races, oftentimes they're not. So you will want to go to your race administration at your club, and they'll likely have your race notice available for you and what's been posted for your event. The other places to go, of course, are the Alpine Ontario website for the AOA and divisional rules, and the Alpine Ontario, Alpine Canada website for the national competition rules, and the FIS website for the ICR, the international competition rules. So this is just an example of what the Alpine Ontario website looks like. Under athlete, you will actually go to the athlete class, and you'll go down and you can look at the two tabs on the right on the Alpine Ontario website. If you click on course setting rules, you'll see something similar to this. It may change this year, this is last year's, but you'll see here that there's all the information you'll need for each of the types of races and what we're looking for rules on the course set. So vertical drop, the number of gates, the distance, the type of gates, combinations, and of course, this will tie in nicely to the workshop that's being set up for course setting. So I encourage you to go to that workshop as well. Also, we can look at our equipment chart, and we'll see this wonderful chart that explains at this regional race level what we expect for equipment, what's mandatory and what's not. So it's a wonderful tab and a piece of information that I hope everybody utilizes this coming season. Once we have our team captains meeting place and time set, there's actually 7 things that happen at the team captains meeting. We'll ratify the jury, and we're going to confirm that there is representation by the clubs. This meeting is actually chaired by the chief of race. And so it's important that they make sure that the representation is there so that that communication is flowing downhill to their athletes. We'll also confirm that the start list is generated. At these level races, oftentimes your start list has already been generated by your race admin team, and it's rolled up with your bibs and your lift badges and everything else. So the referee should look at the start list and make sure it's their responsibility to make sure that it's generated, but it's also generated and it doesn't look like there's any anomalies to it, that it actually conforms to the rules and regulations. So we want to make sure that it is it looks correct as best we can. Of course, we may this year especially have a lot of athletes who don't start this season because we've generated this pre-list. But again, they're done so that we have this available right at the beginning of the regional races. You'll also review your medical plan. And of course, this year that will probably include your health and safety planning and what to expect. So of course, your team meetings this year may be virtual or outdoors. So whatever that plan is, you need to communicate it in your race notice. Provide race resort hill information for your newly arriving coaches who may not be familiar with your venue. Tell them where to go, what lifts to go on, and of course, present and confirm your program for the day. It's important for that so that we understand where everything is happening, what to expect, and of course, where that referee report will be posted at the end of each run. And of course, any club housekeeping information that you might have. Here's an example of a program that, that we have put in place. And basically it just provides information on all the particulars for the day. So when the lift will open for the crew and the jury, when the athletes will, the lift will open for them, any warm-up areas, who the jury is, who the course setters may be, all the inspection times. This is what we confirm at the time of the team captains meeting. And things can change. At the team captains meeting, you may discover that you have a field size a lot smaller than what you expected. So at the team captains meeting, you may decide to tighten up your schedule or move out your schedule, depending. But it's at that point that you'll provide that information about your program and confirm the details of it. If there's any questions at that time, of course, that's when your team captains can ask what needs, what they need as well. So this is a good example of kind of hitting all the bases and what we need to deliver. Another important part of this is the jury inspection and what time that will happen. And this is, of course, alludes to one of the questions that we had on our quiz about who can join us during the jury inspection.
Jen?
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
As we've had multiple conversations on these things, over the years, one of the biggest issues that has arisen is not recognizing how that program for the day becomes your Bible for operations in the day. Is once we establish that and communicate it clearly to everyone involved in the race, it becomes the sort of the gospel of the day as to when things are happening and how you can move things through. When you run into situations of late starts or early starts, etc., on that document that we have with the team captains meeting, which discusses from the team captains meeting and the program set, is what allows us to be able to control what takes place and create the benchmark of satisfaction that all parents, athletes, participants, coaches can take from the day. A well-structured program can lead to a well-structured day and will allow everybody to leave the venue satisfied, because they already knew. You can't claim you didn't know something was going to happen if it's properly laid out in your program and your program for the day.
Yeah, thanks. And I think you taught me this too, Brad, that that's kind of your base for as the part of the jury, that if you do deviate from your program, you can document as to why you made the deviation. So it's a good part of the jury discussion as well. What did we decide and why did we change it? So just again to review, for the team captains meeting, the chief of race is the person who plans and delivers the team captains meeting and the program. They confirm the representation of the team captains, introduce and finalize and appoint the referee. Well, the jury appoints the referee, and then we present the program for the day. And of course, if you are the most knowledgeable person that day as part of the jury, the expectation is that you mentor. As the technical delegate, you are appointed by the sanctioning body, and in this case, again, maybe your club. You'll confirm the information is delivered as per the rules. That's your job. And you're going to finalize the appointment of the jury. And of course, you will mentor. Our referee for the team captains meeting, their big job is to make sure that that draw is done accurately and that they are the liaison with the team captains, that they are the person who's going to provide information on any changes that might happen through the day. And of course, they'll mentor. Now, as we talk about race runs, the first portion is that we will inspect by the jury, then we'll allow inspection by the athletes, of course, our forerunners, and then our competitors. As part of your jury inspection, that's probably the first on-hill job that you'll have as a team. You'll look and go through the start area, the start gate, the course, the gates, the panels, everything. I'm going to go through that with you now. Oh, and okay, so I'm going to actually mention this now. So who can attend the jury inspection other than the jury and the course setter? The answer was the team captains. A lot of you thought that it was the chief of gates, but no, it's the team captains that we welcome and have welcome arms for team captains joining us during the jury inspection. What are we looking at our course, at our start area? Well, of course, we want our start area to have a start one at the appropriate height, which would be for the majority of your athletes at shin level. I know that at these U14 races, we have this various sizes of kids coming through, but we want it to the majority of our athletes. We want to make sure that we have 2 wiring systems coming out showing that we have an A system and a B system in place, triggered by the wand opening, that we have a 45-degree angle on our slope, and that we have a nice level starting area. The pads, if you're looking at adding in pads, start pads, they should be affixed at the time before the race starts. So we want to make sure that we're not changing anything in the start area once we start the race. If, of course, we have some challenges in our start area, which could be the case, we may have some grooming that goes on in the night, and then all of a sudden our start ramp's big chunky mess. Well, that might be our chance to try and get the start ramp in order. And a lot of you answered that there was a big mixture of answers, wasn't there, Brad, that we had people, do we allow athletes to go through the start, or don't we allow them to go through the start? Well, it's a maybe. If we have a wonderful start area all set up, ready to go, of course, we should allow those athletes to go through and inspect. We don't want them pushing out through the gate. And in fact, we can probably take out that wand so that they're not triggering the start signal at the finish area, but they can turn that off as well. But we want to allow for the athletes to go through and inspect that area if possible.
The key in this is whether or not athletes inspect from the start. The answer is definitely not no. The primary answer should be yes, with maybe being if you need to protect and preserve your start area. But according to the rules, the athletes are expected to inspect from the start, which includes the start area, through to the finish line.
Right. So then, of course, we want to go through and start to inspect our course set and our security. Is the course set to the rules that we've established? And of course, are the spill zones protected by security systems that we have in place? And we want to make sure that we are checking all these aspects as we move down the hill. So if there are opportunities for additional safety systems to be put in place, then of course we want to make sure that we have that all in line. And then if you need additional systems of BNet, you can add them in, but we're going to say that you should probably stagger them out and make them quite angled in. Don't make any pockets for anybody to spill into and grab the athlete. This is designed to kind of slow down and catch the athlete. So, and I'll also add that each type of safety system that we have an opportunity to install it correctly and not install it correctly. So go to the manufacturer's instructions on how to install. The 3 rules of BNet do make one system. And if there is an obstruction of some kind, then you would have 1 net below and 2 above to capture the energy that goes to above the obstruction. But then of course you can have, as you see here, several rows all the way connected down your hill. If you have different types of BNet system on your hill, don't interconnect them. You can put one on one side perhaps, or keep them protecting one area in particular, but we don't want to interconnect our systems. It actually null and voids the ability for them to do their job.
So just to clarify on that, in Ontario, specifically in Southern Ontario, we're predominantly using Barry BNet. They have a specific set of manufacturer's instructions, but our friends at 4951, Sammy Piana and Nick Kwasniak, have begun to sell and service the Liskey safety fencing. And there's also some SPM fencing that comes out of World Cup Supply up in Thunder Bay, etc. Each one of those BNet systems has a different manufacturer specification. Jen simply just acknowledged there the three pieces to make a system, which is Barry Cordage. So that's the Barry system that's in place. Liskey and SPM have different requirements and different systems of overlap. So when you're visiting other places, be aware of the fact that what you may see on the side of the hill it may be installed properly, but it is not what you're used to. Here at Devil's Glen, for example, we have two manufacturers and they are both installed very differently. We use the one system not on our primary race hills because people are not normally familiar with it. And the 1 year that I used it on the race hill, everybody told me it was installed wrong. When it was actually installed properly, it just wasn't Barry. So just to clarify that comment for everybody.
Yeah, and here's an example here of where we've used the BNet. You can kind of see it consistently. And what we've got, you can kind of see if there's any anomalies in the Barry BNet system. Just going to bear with me 1 second.
Again, we encourage anyone, if they have questions or comments they'd like to share, to use the chat feature. Just direct it to everyone. And if you have any questions or anything about stuff that we're talking about, please feel free to enter it into the chat. Jen's finding a couple of things here and then we'll move forward. But we do encourage commentaries and question marks to come to us and we can deal with those individual questions.
Hey, Brad, it looks as though that you can't do a full chat. It looks like you can only go privately to yourself, Jen and Nathleen at the moment.
Thanks, Tom. Nathleen, do you want to deal with that one? Thanks, Tom. Nathleen will address that as our chief of operations in the background. Jen, feel free.
I think actually, I think it's designed, Tom. We don't want you whispering in the background. So in this situation, you can see here that we've actually used the Barry BNet to delineate from a ramp that was built the day before. That is actually probably a better scenario than if we had groomed it out and had difficult snow. The idea might have been to set through that. Well, we knew that the conditions to the right side were great. So this spill zone, if you can see here, we actually have two sets of BNet there for this U14 race that we were running down on Skiers Right. And of course, again, here's another example of setting 2 rows of BNet for our athletes who may need that extra protection from additional for this additional BNet systems. We want to make sure that they're far enough apart that we don't have any ramping effects. But if you don't have that space, you can actually space them quite close together and it'll still do a good job in slowing down the athlete. I think coaches now are starting to teach their athletes to go low when they fall or spill. So it's a wonderful lesson for them to learn to do that as well. Of course, here we always want to keep our eye out for any holes or imperfections in the BNet poles. So take the time to replace them if you can, and if not, get them out and replace the net itself. Okay. When we're doing our inspection, we're also going to watch for our panel installation on our gates. We typically have 2 types of gates that we see, the brush and the screw-in gates. We want the base to be into the snow low enough that it grips into the snow, but also that it bends at the white knuckle portion of the gate and bends easily. For our panels, We want them approximately 1 meter off the snow. We want to make sure that we're checking our gate poles for any adhesives or zip ties that might impede the panel coming off easily. We want to make sure that they are in good condition, the panels. And on our newer gate poles, we'll see that we actually have a mark 1 meter off the snow, which actually shows where the bottom of the panel should go.
We've got a question in the background that I'm going to ask Sarah Kennedy to unmute and ask if she can clarify her question so that we can speak to the BNet question. And then SCO has also asked a BNet question that we'll move on to. So Sarah, what do you got there?
Hi. So I noticed on the Hill a lot of times, some people are adamant about using the ties, touching one net to the next. Some places there are clips, obviously some are frozen, some are broken. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Thank you. Now I understand. Barry Cordage installs the big flaps, the web ties on their net. There actually isn't a defined method of how those are to be used. The one thing I will say, they should not be tied off so they create a loop. They can be left lying behind as long as they are loose. And the clips are actually designed to keep the fence looking pretty, which is why they've been eliminated on the new systems. So the clips and the ties are actually, as long as they're left loose, they can be clipped together or not. The new fence does not have it. So Sarah, to get everybody on the same page, the scary thing is there is no right answer to it. As long as the ties at the end, as you can see in this picture, are left hanging loose, the ends are not, because if you get caught in them, what you do want is for your arm to just slide through and not get tangled in it. And SCO Halpin, you had asked a question in there that I'm going back up to so I can read. When overlapping BNet, should the new net be behind the end of the row? Yes. What you want is the fence to be a continuous layer from the you want it to be a continuous layer from the top to the bottom, so that if you were to slide down it, you would simply slide onto the next piece so that the overlap was the bottom piece is behind the top piece, so you just slide straight onto it. Brian, you've asked a question during the race, day of the race during inspection, you see the majority of the net is buried. What can the jury do? Well, the question comes back to what is the style of BNet that is used. Depending on the manufacturer, the bottom cord may actually be under manufacturer specification supposed to be buried. That would be Liskey and SPM, that the bottom cord is supposed to be buried, where Barry is supposed to be loose and free. If it is Barry net and the bottom cord is buried, you simply send a crew down and pull it and release it. And that was then allowed for people to be able to deal with that, where then you loosen the bottom cord to make the Barry net comply with manufacturer specifications. I hope that answers those questions. And we can go from there.
I just jump in, ask a quick question to follow up with that.
Yep.
In either the race notice or the program information, should that then be identified what kind of netting is being used, so that you don't generate a whole bunch of issues possibly during inspection where people are pointing out that that the B netting is in one condition or another, and not recognizing the difference in installation requirement?
I personally would tell you there would be absolutely nothing wrong with pointing out that you see an issue with BNet and bringing it to the jury's attention. Somebody double checks it. And if the answer you get is it's SPM and the bottom cord's supposed to be buried, everybody can move on from that situation. I would not think that it's something that should be added to a race notice by any means, because depending on the level, it would be just a variant that isn't really necessary, as long as we're all doing our job checking BNet. to make sure it's there.
Great, thanks, Brad.
Thanks, guys. So of course, I mentioned before that we want to make sure that our base is actually drilled into the snow at the appropriate level. It allows for our knuckle to bend at the snow level. And we've seen situations where there's a lot of maybe loose snow that comes up to maybe the top of the, towards the top of the knuckle itself. Well, we can actually just dig below and make sure that that knuckle is bending appropriately and allow for that to make sure that hinge is working properly. Otherwise, again, it could catch on the athlete's buckle itself, or it could hinge out itself directly. And that's just unnecessary because we have, you know, the gates set appropriately at the time of course set. So we want to go through, and if we see one or two sticking out, well, maybe we have a base snow issue, and maybe we have to actually use a shorter screw-in gate to help us in those situations. Or it's just maybe the drill was losing battery and we didn't get enough grip into there. So we'll go back around and check all of the gates if we see one or two out of order. And of course, the chief of race will be giving this direction to their chief of course and asking them to get these, you know, tasks done, completing the B-net corrections or the gate replacement. So our final exit here, of course, is our finish area. The line to the finish area, is it a good run out? Is it a space that is safe? And does it look visibly okay for athletes? Is there a finish line painted? Are the woolly bags set up to protect the athlete if they should run into them and they don't hit the photo cells or are injured by the photo cell systems here? So we want to make sure that we do that. We also want to make sure that we actually have our athletes inspect this area too and go right through the finish line so that we can make sure that the conditions in this area are just as well and cleaned out, just like the rest of the course. We want to make sure that we have a good exit for the crew and that there's no wires kind of showing themselves or becoming an issue. Here you'll see in this photo that we blocked off this area so that the wires are somewhat protected. And of course, you'll see that we had a little knuckle showing above the snow there. So we want to make sure we drill that in.
And Nathleen has made a comment that a jury inspection would also include making sure that the timing posts where our finish eyes are mounted are properly kerfed so that if somebody does inadvertently make contact with the wheelie bags and our timing system, that the posts snap away cleanly, protecting the athlete from any stationary object injury. So making sure that we are doing that half cut, the kerf mark on it, on the 2x2 posts. Jen, feel free.
So a big part of our communication at this point will be to make sure that the hill meets the course set and the security that we've established for this race. The additional communication, and it's at this point that we should have these discussions about what still needs to be done in order to open up for athlete inspection. And if it's just some maybe B-net replacement, well, that can be done during the inspection as long as it's not, you know, imposing on the athletes or getting in their way, then we can make sure that we get that done. We also want to, however, review communication. It's very good to include your start referee in this communication. When we're talking about where people will be and their locations on the hill, you may see that the referee will choose the hot spot on the hill where the athletes may have a lot of challenges. You may see that the chief of race will typically maybe be at the top of the hill. And then we leave our lonely TD wherever else they don't want to be. So, so we actually have our eyes down the hill by our jury. And then of course our start referee is at the very start watching that area, and our finish referee is at the very bottom watching that area. So we have a very good communication on what's happening throughout the course. And that includes for our stop-start protocol and racer down protocol. I think it's very important for each and every hill, and it's dependent on who's doing what that day, but to review your stop-start protocols, who's going to dispatch ski patrol if it comes to that, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So when we're talking about our stop-start, who is going to, any member of the jury can call it, but we need to make sure that our start referee is in clear communication on how they will respond to our stop starts. And we will also make sure that we have clear communication on what should happen if dispatch, ski patrol is dispatched. Once we have our course clear, and we will go typically from the bottom of the hill. I like to start with timing, because during a stop start thing, they're sometimes distracted by other things. So we'll get a course clear from timing. Timing will clear, then we'll get a clear from finish referee, and then jury member, maybe TD, and then referee will clear, and then we'll have a clear from the pitch, and then we'll have a clear from the start. The start referee will not start the race until they hear the command of send next racer. Some people use start. I prefer send next racer. It's a bit clearer of a communication, and I blame my British husband for his terrible accent, and that's why I like to do it. And I use that example all the time. So he's the example we'll use. So if he says stop, I don't know what the heck he's saying. So we want to actually say send next racer, and then our start referee will say sending next racer. Bib 31 is in the gate. When bib 31 enters the course, again, they will say bib 31 is now on course. So everybody's got this nice clear rhythm. Now we can okay our athlete inspection. The athletes, of course, are going to inspect the exact same things that we inspected. However, their focus is more likely on the course set and the race line. We want to allow that opportunity for them to have that time. We will ask our athletes, however, to respect the inspection times, because we are on tight schedules sometimes, and we want to make sure that there is an opportunity for each and every team member to go through in a timely manner. We also want to make sure that there's clear understanding about what in and out and sideline and all these different types of inspection protocols we're asking for. Again, it's just to protect the course and make sure that it's in the best condition when we are race ready. So you as a jury may decide how you want your inspection, but be on the same page and communicate that to your start referee once you can open inspection. Athletes should not ski the course during inspection, and of course, respecting the course areas that we've closed off, maybe the start area or any other area that we may have put chemical down or are trying to protect it for race time.
And the opposite is true, where we may need athletes to make sure they are working the snow to make sure that it can be packed down so that it can be removed and be safe for, which is one of the most common errors. I choose that word very liberally. One of the most common errors that we make, that I see most commonly, and other coaches will comment on, that we don't utilize the athletes to clean up our finish area appropriately. Somewhere, somehow, in amongst Ontario racing, the idea of crossing the finish line and helping prepare the finish area by the 100 or so athletes has been something that's been lost, and we need to make sure that we continue making sure the finish area matches the rest of the course in its prep. Jen, continue.
Right, now, Brad, do you want to pick someone to open up their mic? And why are Forerunners important tool for the jury? We're going to pick on someone here.
How is Nicole Burgess doing today?
Oh, Nicole. Nicole, are you on unmuted?
She's cursing me right now.
Yeah, she's ignoring us.
Why don't we invite the Ontario Para Alpine Ski Team coach, Gwen Binsfield, to make a comment because they become very important in her world. Gwen?
Yeah.
Yes, very important in our world, to the point where we were at national championships one year. The Forerunners went through. The finish area had not been properly attended to, and Forerunners wiped out, and our national championships were canceled at Sun Peaks. So yeah, Forerunners are very important. Finish area, very important. They are required to go and report the status of the whole course when they finish going through and make sure that it's safe for the athletes to come through.
Okay. Nicole, do you have additional comments now that you figured out how to unmute?
She really doesn't want to talk to you, Brad.
Yeah, she doesn't.
Bueller.
She'll talk to me tomorrow. I'm quite confident. Cam Twyble, I saw you speaking, having some high-level experience, the importance of Forerunners from your point of view.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Gwen had said. Is the course not only safe, but is it also appropriate? And you also want to hear that the timing is checked out. So, I mean, it's pretty simple why we do that. As well, it's not such a bad thing that racer number one is always a good thing, but many times the coaches want at least three. They want to see something on the hill, and so that's reflective with what the referee is looking for, which is a clear and fair race. So it's nice to see it run. So any questions that you had about surface condition, safety, and is it appropriate will be answered pretty well. And it's also, I'll just add that I think it's part of the race organizing committee's job is to find the best Forerunners possible that are as close to the level of skiing that the athletes that are about to race are. I think that's pretty important.
To Cam's last comment, something that has begun happening around the world with the focus on getting the best match to the level of the field that's going on. A lot of jurisdictions are now recommending going to an age above the race that's happening as opposed to a race below. So if you're having a U14 race, you're actually using U16 athletes or your top level U12s. If you've got a U16 race, you're using FIS athletes or your top level, taking a different approach. One comment I would preface as a jury conversation, both Gwen and Cam made a comment about you're assessing the safety of the course. I want to change the word to you're verifying your security that's on the track and how that the set security is matching with what you expect for the course set. If you're using your Forerunners to determine if your track is safe, somebody's mom is probably going to get pretty upset if that Forerunner gets hurt. Just going to try to refocus that. You are assessing, I know what Cam and Gwen both meant, but making sure that we do understand that the Forerunner's job is not to make sure the track is safe. If we've let the Forerunners go, we've already committed to the fact that the track is safe. We are validating that what we envision how the track will run matches with the security that we've set. That's kind of my big comment towards that and why the Forerunners are an important tool.
Yeah, and it's important to note to everybody too, that this is our opportunity before any athletes have gone down to make those changes that might be necessary. If we see something that isn't quite right with those hopefully experienced Forerunners, we will have this opportunity before we start sending athletes down. Once we've committed to this, we're committed. So when can a jury meeting happen? Brad, I'm gonna let you take it from here for a bit.
This has been a common conversation that when can jury meetings take place? Jury meetings fundamentally take place every time a decision's being made, because no one makes a unilateral decision on what's taking place on a racetrack. It indicated at the top, you've got the 3-member, or depending if it's a speed event, a 4-member jury with pre-appointed jury advisors with the start and finish referee. And anytime you're having a conversation of what's taking place, you should be having a jury meeting and making sure that everyone's on the same page. The last thing anyone ever wants to have happen is, well, you know, this happened, and then the next thing you get is the commentary, well, I didn't agree with that, and away we go. So anytime the jury is like meeting and they're having things, when you're doing jury inspection, everybody's looking at the course security. The referee is focused on the course set. The chief of race is trying to figure out everything that's about to come at him. The TD is looking at the safety and security of the program. You're having discussions about that stuff. You're looking at whether or not there needs to be changes to the program based on the amount of snow that's on the hill, whether or not the piles are going to be whatever. Athletes that have been involved in mom and dad didn't get up, and now you've got people that are coming in. You have a conversation if a provisional rerun takes place. And then afterwards, once the referee posts the referee report, any conversation that takes place related to what has been posted by the referee report would ultimately result in something resembling a jury meeting. There are 2 jury reports. We get into this later. There are 2 forms that are used. There are minutes of a jury without protest, where you document the decisions and activities, the major decisions and activities you've taken in the day. And then there's also a jury meeting minutes with protest. If, unfortunately, you are at a race where there is a protest, you file your minutes and you document what's taken place on a separate form than just the minutes of the day. Jury minutes become extremely important if and when there is any kind of disagreement about the validity or what's taken place within the day, and making sure that goes on. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, oftentimes athletes get injured. As an FIS technical delegate, I've been subject to the fact that an athlete got injured in a race in the finish area, turning sideways to stop, caught a knee, fell down, got themselves up, went away. And about a week, it was about 10 days later, I got notice that an athlete had crashed, had fallen over, what I considered fallen over in the finish area, not crashed, but it appeared that they'd blown their knee. And I was getting a request for information on the race as to what took place during the race from the US Ski and Snowboard legal department, because the parents had filed legal claim for insurance coverage, etc. So you move forward, making sure that you have taken notes that cover off stuff, because unfortunately, a lot of times there are secondary things that take place that you necessarily don't know about on the day. On our jury meetings, as we go through, what if your chief of race and your referee don't agree? It is not uncommon that people don't always agree. I think I can certainly lead a conversation on that with most of the people on this call. And what do you do in those situations? Well, you're a team. The biggest issue is that as a team, you want to find out. This is, as coaches, this is where our module on make ethical decisions applies. And we need to assess what we're doing, apply different ideas, propose solutions, and go back through to figure out what are the issues that are going on. The 3-member jury team needs to come to proposals, making sure that everybody sees everybody's opinion, so that the concept of fair and equitable takes place, not just for the athlete that's in front of you. Many people have seen incidents where a decision is made that benefits Billy and harms Johnny, or vice versa, and we need to make sure that all those points of views are respected. Ultimately, if the referee and the chief of race don't agree, the TD at a technical event does cast the deciding ballot. So you better make sure that if you're acting as a TD, or if you're acting as a referee, or as a chief of race, that you have exhausted the conversation so that people can walk away with agreement as to why a decision was taken. And you move forward from there. There will always be disagreement. It's a matter of whether or not everybody can walk away understanding how a decision was taken. to move forward on something. 2 or 3 years ago, I was involved as a referee at an event, and after a lengthy conversation between the jury, a decision was taken, and the comment that was made by everybody in the situation, I made the comment to everybody was, from this point on, the decision was unanimous. And the decision was not unanimous, but the public face of the jury, the only comment that was made by the public face of the jury from then on was the decision was unanimous. And we moved on to deal with the situation and have no second guessing of what took place. Jen, back to you.
So Brad, I'm just going to go back for a second. Dirk had a question. Coaches used to sign off on the hill if we have a clear concern. How do coaches approach it now?
The coaches would simply approach. You've got your jury and your jury inspection, and that hasn't actually changed. As a jury inspection, you make yourself available, and coaches would address that concern to the jury, and it's the jury's responsibility to make sure that that concern is dealt with. You'd approach any member of the juries. You've got 2 stationary people, one at the start, one at the finish, and the start referee and the finish referee. And then you make sure that through the team captains meeting, you identify who the TD is, who the chief of race is, and who the referee is. And you would approach one of those people and clearly articulate what your concerns are and make sure that the jury then deals with your issues. It's really not that significantly different. You just need to make sure that you're speaking to the jury, and it empowers the jury to make sure that the concerns are being dealt with.
And we'll get to that that type of protest shortly as well, Dirk. And then Dagmar says, how do the Forerunners report to the jury? By going to the timing hut? No, Dagmar, the Forerunners should report to the finish referee, and the finish referee is in direct contact with the rest of the jury by through their radios, and they'll let them know of any concerns or issues that they might have, or they'll explain to the jury that the Forerunners are happy and pleased with the course. So when we're talking about our rules to remember, we actually had, I hope everybody enjoyed the quiz and got something out of it. The rules are actually provided to everybody to make things fair and equitable for everybody. When, however, would we provide a provisional rerun? Well, these are some of the questions that we had maybe some challenges on for some of us in the quiz. So we just want to go over some of these to make sure that we understand what is interference and what the athlete should do when it happens. So interference, of course, is anything, and I think everybody got this answer right. Anything that makes the racer's line or their time longer. And I'm going to share that it can be noise. Brad, that was a question that some people had a challenge on. Can noise be considered interference?
The
And
answer on that one is yes. There were clear examples given at events where people were like, is that interference? People were like, oh, no, noise isn't interference. But noise is a crazy parent screaming, stop, 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 go, go, go. A coach screaming something and the athlete going, what are you saying? So noise can be a distraction that interferes and can be grounds for interference. There are more and more cases of it, unfortunately, where athletes are confused as somebody's yelling and screaming and the athlete is going. How many coaches have watched an athlete push off out of the gate and then stop thinking somebody said stop, and then they skate away instead of standing there, because if they stand there, they'll get a rerun because somebody's interfered with them and distracted them. Couldn't be more blatant. But they oftentimes, somebody will start screaming, go, 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 and they'll turn and they'll skate away and give up their rights to a rerun. It's unfortunately something we need to continue to teach.
Yeah, and we had, just to be clear on what the athlete should do if they come upon some interference, they should stop immediately. Now that also includes a missing gate. If the athlete comes up to the missing gate, they have 2 choices or the interference, they have two choices. One, they can continue on with their run and get a time, cross the finish line, get a time, or they can exit the course immediately, go to the nearest official. Preferably they make their way down and ask the finish referee for a rerun, because they, again, are in direct communication with the jury. As a member of the jury, I'm always watching those athletes who have been interfered with or come across a missing gate, and I'm waiting for them to exit the course, and I'm waiting for them to ask for that rerun. So that's the real direction that we want to take with athletes as they understand this rule in particular. So if, however, an athlete does come across some interference, and we do allow them what we're calling a provisional rerun, we will send them up immediately and get them slotted in for another run. We call it a provisional rerun. Oh, go ahead,
Jen,
Brad.
give me a quick sec. To clarify one thing, Jen made the comment that if a gate is missing, you ski and you continue down the course.
Right.
That is caveat. There is a key caveat on that. You must ski the hole or mark in the snow. Both tips and both feet must pass around where that theoretical gate would be to be considered a clean passage. It is not, I tried to, I got one foot on the other side of it. It is you must ski the spot or hole in the snow, or it would be considered improper passage. But if you stop because that gate is missing, it would be considered interference because of the athlete's right and expectation of the course to be complete. Jen, back to your provisional rerun.
So if we're allowing a provisional rerun, the reason we call it a provisional rerun is that if an athlete at gate 30 is interfered with, but we find out that they actually missed a gate at gate 4, that provisional rerun will not count, because they actually did have a disqualification noted on their first and original run. And that sometimes happens. So we want to make sure that we check for those disqualifications when we do note a provisional rerun. It's something good to jot down in your notes when you're watching for that. Most of our members got this right about the introduction to continue after a competitor stops or climbing. So for slalom, though, I will highlight that a missed or straddled gate is permitted in slalom and they can climb up to correct it as long as they don't impede the next athlete or get in the way of the next athlete. If that happens, they will be automatically disqualified. So if they have a bit of time, they can try and definitely climb up and make the correction. It is not the case for giant slalom, downhill, or super G, because remember, we're talking about a set start, and we're also talking about speed. The ability to gain momentum again once you've stopped is very difficult, and of course it's unfair to the next athlete who may be coming and seeing this other athlete in front of them. So here's a big key here for violations, penalties, and sanctions. It's always a big question as to what an appropriate level of penalty or sanction should be by a jury. And in all cases, due process must be followed. So we want to make sure we're delivering a consistent message based on the process and the rules. I'm going to actually pull, I think we have time for a poll, don't we, Brad? I think we do.
Yes, we do.
I'm going to actually poll everybody, and I'm going to get your opinion. Oh, I can't poll anybody. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use it this way. So using it for an example, we're going to use this as a U12. I want you to consider a U12 who's 10 or 11 years old. And then I also want you to consider a U16, 14 and 15-year-old. And basically, if we see that the athlete skis through or practices the course during inspection, what would your penalty or sanction be to an athlete? Because it is a rule, what would your what would your penalty or sanction be to a U12? And then what would it be to a U16?
How about you
Jen,
go
do
with,
you want me to try launching the poll?
how about we
If
just
you
get
could, yeah.
ladies, why don't we just ask for input on this one? I'll start. Oh, there's the poll. We'll just go back on that and let's answer the poll.
Perfect.
That actually is the answers because nobody voted. So I'm going to ask Jamie Green. Jamie Green, what would you do with a U12 and a U16 on that? Hopefully you're paying attention. Jamie?
Oh, there we are. You can hear me now, Brad?
Thank you, sir. Welcome this afternoon. Thank you for
Yes.
participating.
For a U12, in that circumstance, I would probably approach them and explain the rules to them. Probably potentially have a conversation with their coach to just let them know of the situation. If it was their first time and it looked innocent enough, I probably wouldn't sanction them a lot. If it was, we're going to go to the U16s in an O Cup, definitely going to sanction them and, you know, potentially have them disqualified.
Right.
Jamie's mean.
Oh, I think by
Yeah.
U16 O Cup, they should know what they're doing.
I don't think so. I've got a question from Mike Stratton that we'll go to, but I'm going to ask Martin Rogue to give his opinion of that, going outside of the Southern Ontario world. Marty, what do you think on something such as that? And then Strat, I'm going to answer your question.
For a U16, I think, first of all, we'd have a conversation and see if this has ever happened before with the athlete and the coach. And then if it was blatant, it was a lot of gates, you could start with tear down and stuff. I don't think on the first offense you would disqualify an athlete.
Okay. Would you handle it differently for a U12 than you would for a U16?
Of course. Absolutely. I think the U12s get more of a pass. They've got lots of stuff to worry about on a race day. They're usually pretty nervous. And so, I mean, they make mistakes.
One comment I'm going to make that has been part of our developing this with the Alpine Canada level has been the entertainment value that often U12s are violating the rules because their parents told them it's okay to do it when the parents don't actually know the rules. Where the U16s have been with us long enough to know the rules. So you also have the opportunity at the U12 level to educate the parents as to what the proper rules and regs are. So in an example such as this, oftentimes this problem is created not by the athlete, but by the parent. I'm going to jump quickly. Mike Stratton has asked the question, who is the first point of contact on a jury for a team captain? TD, chief of race, any or all of the above? I'm feeling my kids trying. Anyways, I won't finish that one. Mike, thanks for your question. Strat's asked a very good question. And it kind of goes back to the question about making sure that you have who to make sure you're speaking to. The biggest thing you've got is to make sure that you have anybody on the jury. The most available person on the jury is who you should speak to. And make sure that the jury, it's going then to the entire jury, Mike. The jury should be treated as a whole, and any one member of the jury should be equally approachable by anybody over any issue. Okay. Okay, perfect. We'll move on, Jen, unless you want to go with stuff. Dave Hopper added a great comment and well worded. Thank you, David. Respect and due process following for the athletes. And with U12s, everything needs to be taken on as an educational moment. By U16 is when they have their horrible moments. Dave Hopper and myself have been FIS technical delegates at NORAM level events. And it's been very entertaining because somebody skis 4 or 5 gates in a row and the USSA assigned referee will walk up, look at the guy and go disqualified and walk away. Because at a Continental Cup level, you know better than to even do that, and you pay an instant price. So we need to make sure that we're taking the educational opportunity at the younger ages. to make sure that those habits don't develop, that they think it's okay to do it. Going on to the next one, Jen, you've got the next question. Continuing after a gate fault, what would you do? Jen, you're on.
Okay, so I skipped over a couple more, but all of our violations are listed in Article 628 section. But this is another one, U12 and U14. Does anybody want to pipe up and tell me what they would do for U12 or U14?
How about we pick on
Yeah.
Annika? Annika, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good. What would you do if it was a U12 continuing after obviously stopping or committing a gate fault?
I definitely try to approach them, and if it was obviously they missed a gate, then I would mark that on my sheet. And if they continue to ski, I'd you could try to tell them to pull over because they're still young, right? So.
Okay.
Much to what Dave was saying again about teaching moments, right? Fails to cross the finish line correctly. That's kind of a receives outside help during a competition. This is a good one. Pick on someone, Brad.
Lindsay Crooks, what do you think? If they receive outside help, would you treat a U12 any differently than you teach a U14?
Oh,
This participant list that I have in front of me is a horrible thing, Linz.
yeah. I was just about to get up and go to the bathroom. Yeah, I mean, it would depend who the interference was from. I have seen it, and it has happened where it is a parent, and that's a tough one. You know, you don't see it too often from a coach, if that's what you're referring to.
Yep.
So I mean, I at that level, I would take it under, I mean, you kind of, if you're watching, you know what the situation is and so on. And I think you handle it as fair and so forth. I mean, you know, the kids that know this stuff already, and generally speaking, you can approach it that way. So I would say that at that age, it's a watch and learn thing. And I would probably go and talk to them. And I would say that, you know, probably next time you're not going to get a pass on that one at that level.
Linda Christel's asked the question, what does outside help mean? Linda, that references at a U12 level. I'm going to pretend it's a U8 level. So a young U8 athlete has fallen. They've lost a ski and somebody runs out, helps little Sally Bill put on their ski and then gives them a push down the course and gets them back running and rocking down the track. What do you do in that situation? And that becomes, Lindsay's answer is very appropriate. You have to look and listen. Lindsay, you're still on the hook because I'm just going to make you suffer, given the fact you made the comment you need to use the ladies' room. Would your attitude be any different if it was a U16 or a FIS race than it would be if it were a U10 or U12 race?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. I feel strongly that you make those mistakes at that U10, U12 level, and after that, I don't know. I'm tougher on them, especially at U16 and FIS for sure. U14, I would take it under advisement. You know, if it was an O Cup, I would expect that generally they're seasoned in that by U14. But with the outlying regions, sometimes you don't get that. Certainly in Thunder Bay, we don't. So, you know, I would handle it a little bit differently. But yeah, a U16 FIS, quite frankly, no.
Matthew, oh, sorry.
Oh, go. I was going to say that to me,
not in a mean way.
No, and Lindsay makes a good point too. You'll see it over and over again. That those pods of athletes are usually moving around with the same pods of coaches, and one of those coaches has maybe seen this over and over again. I, as the chief of race or the TD, like to defer to the referee because they generally know these kids who are maybe doing the same error or the same violation over and over again, and they're a wonderful resource to go to about, you know, historical information as well.
Absolutely. And
Nope, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so if somebody like me is an SOD, I will generally be standing near somebody who can say, oh, that, that's a typical behavior of that kid or not. And that's a huge part of it. It's kind of keeping your eyes open and watching that. That's how I feel. But yeah, that crew tends to work, you can just ask a coach generally. And I think I've always gotten fair answers that way.
Nathalie Hager would like to pose a question to us. That is a fair question. So Nathalie, feel free. When the AV technician can't figure out how to unmute, this is a problem.
Come on, Nathalie.
Nathalie's question, so that she can try to figure this out, is what do coaches specifically teach their athletes about accepting outside help? As race officials, outside help is not allowed. It's a disqualification. And although I agree with everything that's being said, the one overarching it is an overwhelming situation, because you get somebody that receives outside help and all of a sudden they're in the top 10. And that is not fair to everyone. It's not fair and equitable as to what happens. So as a result, you do have to be very conscious of what takes place with that, that outside help in the conversation. We've had a question from Brian. During a team captain meeting, this can be addressed. Ski off, comes off to a stop, then the athlete moves out of the course, usually being U14 and up. Again, the reality, Brian, is the fact that in slalom, you are allowed to interdict. You are allowed to continue after committing, having a stop, but in giant slalom, you're not. So the team captain's meeting isn't necessarily a place that you need to do it, because if you know you're going to race a GS, if your ski comes off, you're stopped and you're out. Whether it be because it takes place because it's a safety issue, because the next athlete's already coming. So I would say that it would be a reminder at a team captain's meeting, but all coaches should be teaching their athletes that at all times from the younger ages. Sarah Kennedy added the comment that we should be teaching our rules, teaching the rules of the sport during training, so that people are they're going so that they know what to do when the time comes. Sean, to your question, unfortunately at U8, U10, the kids still end up in the middle of the pack sometimes, which can cause problems. So what do you mean by competitive time? Are they on the podium first, second, third? No. But are they in a place that somebody makes a comment about? Unfortunately, I have seen situations at U12 races where that is a situation. So, well, understanding your comment, it is something that I have seen take place. Let's move on from this, and we can get Jen keep moving on where we're at.
So and I'm just going to kind of close this portion of the conversation about penalties, that there is a varying degree of what we can, of course, and can't decide as a jury. It is a team effort to come to a fair and equitable decision on how these types of violations can be dealt with. So again, at our regional races, we do want to take the first opportunity of delivering education first and have it as a teaching moment. And then as we grow and develop, of course, we want to kind of move forward with our penalties and sanctions. I heard a couple of things of a reprimand. That's a good thing. Maybe, BNet rolling after, you can maybe move them back on their start position. That might be difficult this year with COVID in mind, but there's different things that you can do that will tell them that it's not acceptable. But hopefully, again, the first line of attack is educational moment. Now that we've completed we've done our first and second, or our first run, and we get our opportunity to do our referee report. Our referee report, I'm hopeful that most of you have seen a referee report, but pick on someone, Brad. Pick a name for me, please.
Let me take a look at who the magic person shall be this time. Owen Caves. How are you tonight, Owen?
Owen. Owen's having some technical difficulties too.
Oh, he'll get through it. I know what he does for a living.
We're gonna ask Owen the question, who fills out the referee report, Owen? I wonder if Lindsay's still on.
Oh, it's all right. We'll go to Terry McCoy. Terry, are you there? Who fills out the referee report?
Well, I'm going to keep going, and if Terry gets on, we can deliver that answer. But the referee report will show this information. It'll show the information of the club, the race itself, the event, the category of race, the gender, and the event. And then, of course, we get to show and account for all the athletes who may have disqualified, and we'll clearly note the bib number, the athlete, their club or zone, their gate number that they had the fault at, and of course, any notes that we have in the gate judge. We'll also want to know anybody who didn't start that day, anybody who wasn't permitted to start, and that is generally because of non-conforming equipment or unsafe equipment rules. And then, of course, who did not finish. So this is information that we'll note all on the referee report. And of course, finally, the referee will note the time that it is published and give a deadline of 15 minutes afterwards, the date, and sign it. So the responsibility of the referee, nobody wants to answer this for me, but the responsibility of the referee report is, of course, the referee. There is a process to this, and we want to make sure that we do follow this process. One thing that we've come across in recent years more often than not now, and we ran up against this at Devil's Glen, was the athlete came up after and they were not on the DSQ list and they wanted to disqualify themselves. And that is perfectly okay too. So even in the case where you might have 0 disqualifications noted on your referee report, you will still allow for a 15-minute protest period. And along with the protest period, the team captain will approach with their $50 fee or whatever protest fee is assigned that day with their protest, and providing information on or proof that they were wronged on the disqualification list on the referee report. So
Dave, Jen, Dave
Yeah.
Hopper has asked if he can make a comment, so I invite Dave to unmute.
100%.
Practically, referees' reports are often filled out by a whole bunch of different people. Referee takes the responsibility for the report, but doesn't actually necessarily write all the numbers on the page. A smart race secretary is filling in the did not finishes and the did not starts as the race is going on. The referee may have other responsibilities and may ask somebody else to do it. I've worked a bunch of high-level races and never seen the referee fill in a report. You know, the U.S. Nationals or the World Cup, Tommy Johnson's a referee. I've never seen him fill out a referee report in his life. So practically it can be assigned to somebody else if the referee is willing to take the responsibility for it. So yeah, you end up with, it gets done and it gets blessed by the referee, but not necessarily doing all of the filling it out part. It's tough enough to get coaches to want to do paperwork without loading them up with, you got to fill in the whole damn thing. So give them a break, do most of it for them, and ease them into the problem, would be my theory on that.
Yeah, I should probably back up and say, of course, the chief of gates is handing off the gate judge cards to, the finish area, and they're verified, and this is the final decision by, usually there's some discussions that might come up about certain athletes, and hopefully you as part of the jury have been documenting what you've been watching and seeing, and you can verify disqualifications versus did not finish. And you'll be able to help support this document. But yes, the end result and the end delivery is the responsibility of the finish referee.
Excuse me. The responsibility is that of the referee solely, not the finish referee, but the referee.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I
solely.
said that.
There have been a lot of comments going on that the practical filling it out may take place by several different people. I'm sort of dealing with a lot of the commentaries that are in the sidelines. That is correct. But the ultimate responsibility of filling out the referee report is that of the referee. So the signature at the bottom is that of the referee. This is one of the examples of a document that is not the responsibility of the jury, but is the responsibility of one member of the jury. And it is the decisions taken that are reported on the report of the referee are that ultimately of the referee. It goes back, Tom Vincent brought up a comment about when we're dealing with sanctions, if there are sanctions or penalty that are taken, depending on if they escalate beyond a verbal reprimand or whatever, should be noted on the technical delegate report, another report that is the unilateral responsibility of one person on the jury. Self-evident, the technical delegate report is filled out by the TD at the end of the day. Good catch, Tom, that we need to clarify that any reprimands or sanctions should be noted on the minutes without jury minutes, and the TD should take responsibility and record them on the TD report. Let's keep moving on from the report of the referee as we're closing in on 5:30, and we have a few more slides to get through.
So now you have the right to protest. Again, based on Article 640, the jury will accept any physical evidence and reevaluate when necessary when there's evidence presented. There are times, and Nathleen will probably attest to this, that she will consider additional communication outside of physical evidence, and that again is up to the jury to decide if it's, warranted or not, and if it's valid. Sometimes I've seen a bid number that I kind of questioned, and then when I didn't have any physical evidence and I saw some more documents coming through, I really did have an understanding that yes, I'm not going to disqualify that athlete based on that information that I received initially. So the right to protest against the admittance of a competitor or their equipment. This is probably for higher level races, and I'm not going to stay on this too long because when we're talking about regional races, generally at our inspection, during our athlete inspection, we are looking for equipment that we talked about at the beginning of our session, that little sheet that shows us what's acceptable and what's not. There's an opportunity between the start of the between the inspection and the start of the race to get those things corrected, hopefully, and then we don't have any issues at the time of the start. So that is before the draw for those kinds of situations. Against the course or its condition.
This speaks directly to the question that was asked earlier that many years ago, there was a team captain sign off on security on a safety report. This is the rule that was supposed to be addressing, and against the condition of the course and its condition is 60 minutes before the start of the race, i.e. when the jury is inspecting, you should be attentive and trying to deal with it. But there is an actual article in the rule book that allows you to protest the condition of the course, and that includes safety fencing, gate, course set, or other stuff. Okay.
Correct. And then against a competitor or official because of irregular behavior, maybe unsportsmanlike conduct, that can happen at any time within 15 minutes after the last competitor has finished the race. So at any point during the race, that can be addressed by any member of the jury. Against a disqualification, of course, we just talked about this within 15 minutes after the posting of the referee report. Against timekeeping, within 15 minutes after the posting of the unofficial result list. Most of you got this answer right, that unofficial list is not the posting on the board or live timing, is not the actual results. The official results are still being compiled, but we may have some question against the timekeeping itself, and you can post that protest period after the posting of the unofficial result list. So we're looking at our final heats for cross. I'm just going to mention this briefly. So when we're talking about our cross and parallel events, these types of races, we are making on the spot calls. So the communication is always critical when we're talking about disqualifications or people advancing. That communication is generally happening throughout the event. And so that they're held a little bit differently. There is generally no DSQ period, protest period provided on DSQs or referee report. And of course, we have our tear down and our results. So we've completed our race. We've done everything we need to do. We've decided as a jury that everything is completed. Once that jury has gone through the 15-minute protest period and they have decided to issue out any sanctions or penalties, that jury has completed their job and they are done. There's no more, and I'll let Brad speak more to that actually now. Brad, would you like to talk to that point?
Unfortunately, I was reading the chat, so if you could repeat the question to me, I was my presentation.
I'm wondering if you can just talk about the opportunity for the jury to finalize their decisions, and then anything beyond that point. We're not really addressing. The jury has been now finished.
Yeah, the biggest challenge you face is as you go through, you'll have a meeting. The jury should definitely meet in the finish area following the last competitor coming across. At that time, the referee would take responsibility for posting his second referee report on a 2-run race. You would wait through your process and then have the 15 minutes following the posting of the second referee report. And then the key on this is the fact that technically at that point, the tenure of the jury ceases. So the conversations that take place that are so common where, 25 minutes later, somebody's gone back to their car and put the video onto a 14 or a 26-inch laptop and decided that Jake Blair hasn't straddled that last gate, and you get into the protest that comes back. Technically, after that 15 minutes is when the tenure of the jury ceases. The technical delegates still and the chief of race still have obligations and responsibilities to make sure that things get done and move forward. But arguably, the tenure of the jury is done, and no decisions related to what takes place beyond that are then the purview of the jury. So within a half an hour at the end of a race, typically, the role and responsibility of the referee comes to a close. And the decisions then go into, you must protest results against functional ideas with the governing body, which is basically never successful. To Tom's comment, Tom Vincent's made a comment that most races don't give 60 minutes between inspection and the start of the race. It's recognized. The FIS ICR is the dream world of how international competitions are being set. At our level, we may need to make sure that there is time between to make sure that if somebody sees something, we do have time to deal with it. And in the Alpine Canada rules, that time frame, I believe the time frame in the Alpine Canada, don't quote me, I will look it up, but I believe it's 50 minutes prior to the start of the race, Tom. I believe in the National Alpine Canada competition rules, it's 15 minutes, as opposed to the ICR at 60 minutes prior to the start. One of the biggest areas.
James asked a question too. I know you mentioned that athletes will come to disqualify themselves. How do we best approach this?
Jane, the highest level now, the athletes are very conscious. Social media has become our friend when it comes to things like self-disqualifications. If an athlete, you need to review it as a jury. A lot of kids don't want to get called out because somebody's found something and it wasn't caught other kids will post it on social media, and the embarrassment of taking a race spot that shouldn't be taken is done. Those joining the call from the National Capital Division a couple years ago at a NORAM race, an athlete straddled. People argued that he knew he straddled, and the next day, a very large post and a viral post went up of said athlete straddling, and it turned out that he'd been confronted that he knew that he'd straddled and he didn't report himself, and it became quite the fiasco on social media and quite an embarrassment for that athlete and his team, and at a Continental Cup level and for his nation. It became quite the issue for them. So that is sort of the way you'd be looking at it. If somebody self-reports, Jane, you would sort of accept it. If they're saying, "Hey, I straddled and I should be DQ'd," you need to believe it and move forward from there. We quite literally had the conversation about you need to do your due process and not accept it blatantly. There was an event in Europe where the 30th place athlete self-disqualified themselves, moving the 31st place athlete into 30th place, and thus giving them a superior start position for second run. And the athletes that self-disqualified didn't need the Europa Cup points, where the 31st place athlete needed a Europa Cup result to maintain their position on the team. And it was deemed to be an unsportsmanlike act that was taking place. So, Jane, your comment of questioning of how do you approach it, it is fair. But generally at the younger ages, you accept that the athlete is trying to be genuine and behave in a sportsmanlike manner. David Story, if you could unmute, I don't understand your question. That was only after the protest period. Dave, do you want to expand?
So what happened in that NORAM race is that the referee, who was actually the head coach of the U.S. team, actually saw the straddle on video review that evening, and hadn't seen, and only at that point was the straddle actually seen by anyone. At which point he called the TD, and the TD started calling up the line all the way back to France to get an answer. I actually talked with Patrick Biggs about it, and whether the athlete would have known. His response was that, well, sometimes you don't actually know, that it can be close enough that the feel of it can be just when you hit the gate. And NORAM doesn't assign fines like they do in Europe. So it's not to the athlete's advantage in a NORAM race if they're not 100% sure to actually self-report.
Correct. Okay. Jen, do you want to finish up with for what we should be keeping as race documents in case of something that comes up behind us? And then I believe we're
almost there. Yeah.
And what we would look to is people to start typing if they have any questions to everyone, and we can deal with those questions.
Yeah. So as everybody's thinking about what more they want to ask, we want to see the race results, of course, with our timing reports and tapes. And we want to see the TD report. The TD report is in the race packages that are available on the Alpine Ontario website that Nathleen has so lovingly put up there for us to use and compile. We'll also have the team captains meeting minutes with the attendance of who was there and the complete schedule for the day, so that we can basically speak to what we did and didn't do that day. The jury minutes without protest. And then of course our jury minutes, without protest. And then of course our jury minutes with protest if that is necessary. Not both reports may be needed, but always without protest should be included in your race package. And unfortunately, sometimes we have some injury and we must provide some information about what's happened. This is the TD's responsibility to make sure that this is complete. They may not be the person who is filling out the document, but it might be going through the medical team on staff or the ski patrol, but they must make sure that this is completed if they don't do it themselves. And of course, any key volunteers and staff. This will help with any lists for people who might have witnessed the incident and provide additional information for you later. So this is actually key for us going forward as we start to document who's part of the race. And that'll be easier to do as we move into the new snow reg system and more documentation that we're doing online for documenting who's on hill. Then, of course, our final reminders for you as being part of a jury. Make sure you've got clear communication, that you are deferring back to communication to your referee and to the rest of your team captains at all times. Make sure that you are addressing any issues as a jury for any concerns about security or the course. Go by the rules. Like, it's not a guideline anymore. They are actually called rules. The course set must be appropriate to the age, and we want to make sure that we are delivering a consistent product across our province. The jury should always be referring to the rules. Get to know them, mark them in your ICR, make decisions as a team, use the rules and the process to your benefit, and make sure that you tie off any loose ends before your jury is finished. Before you conclude, make sure that you've taken care of anything that needs to be taken care of. It just helps with everything. If you can speak to the rules and the process that you did everything you need to, you don't need to actually answer to much more than that. I'm going to encourage you to get out and job shadow. If it is our obligation, I'm going to repeat this over and over again, as officials and coaches, it's our obligation to mentor and train. More and more now we're doing a better job of it. It used to be that the TD was responsible for the rules and the chief of race was responsible for the hill and the referee was responsible for the athletes. That is no longer the case. I feel like we all have an obligation to all those aspects of our race, and we really do take it all seriously as a team. And I'm so proud of what we do here in our province. We do a very good job overall, and we really take that to the next level. We have such a wonderful resource for wonderful coaches, wonderful TDs, wonderful FIS TDs in our community that there's no excuse for not knowing the rules. And in fact, we should be taking pride in what we do produce out of Ontario and kind of measure up to that standard. So I'm going to encourage you to keep doing that for your officials and coaches. And again, if you are an official, it doesn't mean that you can't take coach instruction or learn how to course set, or you don't have to do the course set. I'm never going to do a course set, but really just take the opportunity to learn what you should be looking for and what you need to know.
Dave Hopper has asked if he can make a few comments. Dave, most recently, or fairly recently, was the technical delegate representing the FIS at the Killington Women's World Cup race. Dave has a vast amount of experience, and we are delighted to have Dave join us tonight. Dave would like to say a couple of comments once again. Please, David, welcome.
Thanks, Brad. There should always be a jury minutes without protest. I write mine the day before and I hand it to the race secretary. It has two things written on it. One is the course and on-hill competitive security has been inspected by the jury in the company of the team captains meeting and meets the requirements of FIS, ACA, AOA, whatever, and has been accepted as set. And then that phrase is in there twice for the first inspection and the second inspection. And I just tell the race secretary on the radio, put 8:05 beside the first one and put 11:30 beside the second one when we actually make those decisions on the hill. No matter what, you have to have those. That's the sort of the bare minimum of reporting on jury minutes. You got to have without protest. We looked at the course, we thought it was okay. We said it's good to go racing. After that, you put whatever else you want in it, but I think those are critical.
And David, if I may, that actually segues into a question we got from Gary Monroe before the start of this session. Yes, Gary, I did read your email. Surprise, surprise. I didn't delete it or ignore it. Gary asked a question about first run course set followed by second run course set, the way the rules are written, and how we interpret them in Ontario. The best practices that we follow, the course set must be, the course set is the responsibility of the course setter. The rule is very clear that the guy with the drill is in charge of drilling holes and putting gates in those holes. The rules actually do not indicate that you cannot use the same holes twice, Gary. The rules indicate that the course setter, the assigned second run course setter, makes the decision as to where those gates go. So to your question about how does the Southern Ontario phenomenon of a redress work, the second run course setter that should be assigned to take a look and do an assessment, because David's just spoken to on the minutes of a jury without protest, that following the first run, there must be a jury inspection to inspect that the safety and security of the course still meets appropriate standards for the competition to continue. So if a gate is required to move or whatever, that is how that is managed on that. We circle back on it at the beginning. Somebody asked a question about the old safety delegate program, where someone would come in and the coaches would gather before the start of the race and they'd sign off that the course was safe, and then we'd start the race, and that would sort of be the end of what would take place. Unfortunately, in litigation, the static process of establishing that things were, quote, safe before the start of the race fell apart, because as every coach and every official that's ever been on a racetrack, safety is an ever-evolving situation. Gary, your question talked about you get a gate that's got a massive rut that builds up in it, and before the start of the second run, you need to move that gate so that it stays safe and equitable for the athletes to take part. Those assessments must be done. That's part of why the dynamic activities of a jury have been reinstalled in what we do with racing, and why the safety, the pre-race sign-off has gone away, because it was considered actually negligence, that you thought, oh, before the race it's safe, but we never actually took the time to stop and do another assessment that things were safe throughout the race. Most of us did, but the reality of it is the structure that we were imposing did not take place. Thus, the work over the summer to create a module of what a jury should be doing throughout a day that Jen and her team have created for us, that we've just gone through as part of this education opportunity.
So Brad, Mike just asked the very next question. How much redressing can a course setter do before a second athlete inspection is necessary? And then Lindsay followed up with, do you always need an inspection even with a redress?
The proper answer.
Give us the right answer, and then we can
there's
go
a
into the
proper
gray
answer.
area.
I will give the proper answer. To Mike Schneider's comment, the second run course setter can do, if you're moving gates plus or minus a couple of feet, that goes through. FIS and Alpine Canada and the US Ski and Snowboard last year, we had a direct case study that was conducted that between first and second run in an official high level competition, there should always be a second run inspection. You go to should always, not must always, but should always be a second run inspection. in the interests of time, etc., and the ability to see the courses that we have in Southern Ontario, oftentimes we forego the second run inspection because we are doing minimal changes to the course. And unless things have devolved significantly, sometimes it doesn't go. Part of the challenge we face in the conversation that we've had is the fact that how fast our kids do an inspection. Are they actually really doing an inspection and paying attention to anything that's going on as they zip down the course becomes part of the conversation that would take place. If you're at a high level event and you sign a half hour to inspection, Cam Twyble can speak to the fact that many of the athletes are coming off the course after 20-25 minutes of inspection. They don't take a 2-minute zip through to figure out what's going on. How much redressing can you do, Mike?
Brad, were you asking me to comment on that, or?
No, I just sort of rhetorical.
Okay.
That you would support that comment. Thank you, Cam. So how much redressing can you do? You could reset every gate by a foot, Mike, and it doesn't change the line of the course. So you could get away without doing a second run inspection if everybody on the jury concurs. Lindsay, your comment of how you always need an inspection, even if the redress. Technically, the answer is yes, we should have. It is a protocol we should be moving towards, that we're having it. If you look at Snow Stars, if you look at the Skills Quest, from an athlete point of view, inspection is actually a skill that we are supposed to be teaching our athletes. And if you're only racing ever so often, they don't get a lot of opportunities to learn the competition situation of inspection. And it becomes a fundamental skill that people do need to have. And then to Andrew Hilton Wiggs, what if a gate is moved partway through the run? What are the restrictions for that? To that commentary, again, it becomes the issue of what is deemed to be moving and affecting the time requirements for a run. I can tell you personally, I would never move a gate during a gender run. Plus or minus a couple of inches that doesn't affect the line. Great, but I would never move a gate during a run unless there was a piece of terra firma sticking up through that was going to destroy skis that needed to be dealt with. I hope that answers those questions, avoiding everything I can.
Yeah, I think this year, especially with our smaller field sizes, this would be a great opportunity for us to start engaging a second run inspection for those clubs that, you know, kind of got away from it due to the numbers and, like you said, time constraints. So this is a wonderful year.
You get Mike Schneider's now asked the question, as a second run course setter, I've been put in a position where the course was torn apart and there was no time for a second athlete inspection. Who steps in for that situation? The answer on that one is the jury. Mike, I can speak to the fact that my daughter was at a race. Something went on. People started plowing forward with a timeline agenda. My daughter did not get to inspect. She hit something and she went cartwheeling and she got trucked to the hospital. She got taken to the hospital on a backboard in an ambulance and spent overnight at the hospital as they did a whole bunch of inspections on her. And there were a lot of people that were very, very nervous because of the fact when I found out there was no time for a second run inspection after a course reset, the jury needs to take responsibility because that's gross negligence. If somebody had gotten seriously injured, like full up gross negligence, no questions asked, that you would be giving away your house as a result of that one. Okay.
Yeah, Gary says, yeah, part of the rules say you need to communicate to the team captain. So of course, yeah, that communication goes straight through. And thanks for the comment, Mike.
Yeah.
Jen, just one last one on that communication to the team captains and competitors. My question was basically, how do you tell them? So you've had your first runs complete. You had to you've done your redress. You had to move one gate a foot. And now you got to go back and you're supposed to tell team captains and all competitors that you move that one gate 1 foot. What's the best way to do that?
You just announced it at the top of the hill to the team captains. Hey guys, we moved a couple of gates. Other than that, the course line is running as set. Most coaches
Perfect. Thank you.
do it, and away you go.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. start referee is a great option to make sure that they keep bellowing it out so everybody knows. They're stationary, they're bored, they'd love to have something to do.
Yeah.
Okay. We have come in on time, Jen.
I
Congratulations.
know, I'm pretty pleased about that.
As we wrap up, any last questions, and feel free to contact me at any time, guys, if you have questions or curiosities. I know I can speak for Nathleen and Jen. They're happy to answer any questions that you additionally have. For the people I picked on tonight, thank you for being willing participants. Nicole Burgess is vehemently screaming that it's a technical glitch. She wasn't ignoring us. I still am not believing that, and she's going to get mad at me later. Thanks very much for everybody joining us. And there we go. Nicole, see the chat works, eh, Burgess? Rude. Okay. Great thing. Anybody that wants to contact us, feel free. Thank you for taking the time to be part of everything. Those of you from I've taken part in this, and we built this out as an Alpine Canada product, as you can see with the ACA logo on this. The primary purpose, as Jen alluded to at the beginning, is to create a platform where everybody understands what we're trying to produce as a product for all of our athletes. If I'm at a race in Ottawa at my home hill, I guess, in many ways, Camp Fortune, if we're at Timmins, or if we're up at Loch Lomond in Thunder Bay, or if we're anywhere in Southern Ontario, the experience every athlete deserves is exactly the same. And the only way we're going to get that is to get clarity of the obligations, roles, responsibility, and how coaches fit into that session and understanding. As a last comment, there was a comment midway through this session, and I would like to commend that the one learning exercise, we've killed it once again. The non-existent never ever rule that has never been a rule was commented on in the chat. Never ever has 3 pieces of equipment required to cross a finish line. Never ever. We have no idea wherever this ever came from, but somebody commented that they learned that today, that it was never ever a rule, and we'd like to commend you and thank you.
That's a rule.
You and I.
If you learned that today, we're happy.
You're successful that one person learned that has never ever been a rule. And Bruce Twyble, no, it has never been a rule.
We should bring it back, Brucey.
Thank you.
Bruce has started that rule, just as a side note.
That shows you how long he's been at this.
I got you, Bruce. I got you.
Yes, thanks again, everybody. And thanks to Brad, my comrade, and Nathleen for manning everything for us.
Thanks so much, guys. That was super informative. And, you know, of course, this workshop's been put together over a period of time where, you know, outside of COVID, sorry, my daughter's doing a bit of a dance for you guys. It's dinner time, so they're sitting here with me at the table.
Hello, Sally.
It's really going to be a different year for us this year. Yeah. So that mentoring piece that Jen talked about, I think is going to be really critical and a great opportunity for coaches and officials alike that want to learn a little bit more, get a little bit more experience. Don't be afraid to put your hand up. I mean, if we have racing going on this year, which we hope we will, there's not going to be a lot of time spent indoors. So if you're looking to stay warm and learn at the same time, just put your hand up and shadow. In Southern Ontario, there's been discussions about assigning, you know, assistant referees and assistant course setters as much as we can, so everybody gets some experience and some knowledge. So don't be afraid to put your hand up and learn as you go. We need to get everyone as I wish we could have all officials and coaches on this call. I think it was amazing that we had upwards of 70 people here, but we just need to spread the message further and wider. So thanks, guys, for your time tonight putting this together. It was really, really, really informative.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, guys. We'll stay on a little bit longer. If there's any other questions that somebody might have, we'll just stay on a little bit longer, but otherwise we'll end the session here. And thanks again, everyone, for your participation. For you coaches, make sure that you, or anybody, make sure that you've noted your name in the attendance so that we make sure we log you. But the coaches, you will get, I believe, coach credit for this. Brad, I'm not sure exactly what credit, but you'll get credit for this. So if you've given me your coach number, I'll be submitting that to Robin for you.
This is actually considered risk management, so it actually is not just education.
Can I also advertise, Jen, that we do have annual updates scheduled, one for Saturday at 10 a.m. and one for next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. We haven't opened the registration yet because we're working with Snow Reg on that, but it will be coming. So that is the annual update that is required for level 2 officials and up to take at least every other year. And we also have level 1 courses and level 2 courses. Just check the Alpine Ontario events calendar for the schedule.
Yeah, take that level 2 course. If you felt a little gray in some areas, just take the level 2 course. It's great.
Are you done?
Thanks, guys. This is good. Bye now.
Brad, because I got in so late. So seriously, the 3 equipment rule, like you can't run down the hill.
If you crash between the last gate and the
finish, last gate,
get up and run.
Yeah, you can run across or whatever. But what about the whole, if you lose one, like when Bodie Miller would lose, I mean, Bodie's not going to do it, but he would lose a ski and he just continues skiing down the course.
In slalom,
why not?
In slalom, if he's in slalom, he can do that. In GS, the likelihood of you losing a ski and not stopping is very low. And the moment you stop, you're out.
Okay.
Bodie, unfortunately, you picked a very bad example because Bodie actually did blow a shoe in a GS race about 3 gates from the finish about 7-8 years ago now. God, it's a long time ago. But Bodie blew a shoe about 6 or 7 gates from the finish and finished the course on one ski and was deemed after video review to have not have stopped and was a valid finish.
Well, no, that's why I asked, because I'm like, I've seen him do it how many times where he just one pops off and he keeps on going. You're like, oh, pro.
Yeah, but you don't. The comment of you need 3 pieces of equipment to finish has never ever been a rule.
That's hilarious.
It's never ever been a rule, and there have been kids, there's been parents, there's been all kinds of stuff go on. It was announced on CBC radio or CBC live broadcast one time that, oh, that finish won't count because he didn't finish with 3 pieces of equipment. It is not a rule. That has never ever been a rule.
Yeah.
And we need to kill it because the amount of chatter at the bottom of a U8, U10, U12 race. Oh, Sally crashed and she hasn't got 3 pieces of equipment. She didn't finish properly. And you're like, not true. Move on.
Brad, that rule cannot be killed.
But you have to say after the last gate. That's what everybody, right? You can slide across. You can do whatever. You can penguin your way in.
Yeah, but the bottom line is the rule that makes the comment is you must have 3 pieces of equipment to finish. That's not a rule. Period.
Okay.
All the other caveats are you must have correct passage, and if you like GS, you're probably not going to get down the hill. Slalom, you're going to end up interfering with somebody behind you, therefore you're disqualified. So it's all good.
Okay. And who made the comment that the refresh course is this weekend?
Natalie?
Where is that?
That was me, Tanis. It's online. It's going to be Saturday morning from 10 till noon.
Okay.
Or there's another one next Tuesday from 7 till 9 at night. Registration's not open yet, but hoping to get that opened up soon. And it's online.
Can we ask Alpine Ontario to send out an email so we can log in and get that done? That would be awesome.
Yeah,
I'll let all my coaches know.
Yeah, there's a link for.
It was in the last race line, but once it's open, then yes, I think Robin will probably send out another race line. She can do that, I'm sure.
Shoot me an email, Tanis, and I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm sorry, I had such technical glitches with my computer and I was on with IT, but I'm sorry I missed it. It sounds like it was awesome.
Well, we got it recorded, so you can spend 2 hours of your time, anytime, watching it over.
I caught the last bit, but yes, I'll be logging through again. Awesome. Thanks so much for all your effort, everybody.
You're just gonna phone and bug me. I know what you're gonna do.
And Jane, there will be more updates, though those won't be the only two. So there'll be more scheduled after next week.
Perfect. Have a great night, everyone.
Martin, I'd say it's good seeing you, but you haven't turned your video on. There you are. Turn your unmute yourself.
Hey, buddy.
How are you doing, young man?
I'm all right. Young man, thank you. There's only a few people that can say that, but I appreciate it.
Rosie and I both have you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And I have Brad.
And now, well, Stu, you call me little boy, so we're all good with that. How's life in Ottawa, Marty?
It's good. It's good. We're Joe and I are planning to go skiing on Friday. We're going up to Trauma. So we're gonna get some sliding in. Looking forward to it.
Good.
Yeah.
We're making snow here at the Glen yesterday and today, and they shut down a while ago, and now we're actively looking forward to +9, +8, and +7 over the next 3 days.
Oh my goodness. We're gonna get rain here in Ottawa. And it's supposed to rain next week at Trauma a couple of days, but whatever, it's still sliding.
Kathleen, you put your hand up. Why do you do that?
Does Jen want to stop recording? And there's still one more question in the chat.
What's the question in the chat?
The question is, we
Dirk
had a
is here.
U16 in
Where's Dirk?
first. Is Dirk still here?
Yeah, Dirk's here. Yep. What's up, Dirk?
Dirk's question.